Welcome to the Minnesota Liberty Network, and here are your hosts, Bill Liskey and Drew Roach.
Welcome back.
What's going on?
Well, 2 more weeks of crazy. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never surprised.
Yeah, well, you're definitely learning. You're learning the ropes now. You've got your full steam ahead.
Yep, full steam ahead. It's been interesting to say the least. You never know what's going to come out of a liberal's mouth.
That's
Or
an accurate statement.
They're just batshit crazy.
I don't think you ever know what anyone's going to say on the Senate floor. It's always a question.
Sure. Yeah.
I've always got a comment on what you're wearing. Very nice shirt, Drew. I like that.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Like that. It's a little warm out today. It's like almost 80 degrees.
Looks good.
That's why I'm wearing a t-shirt.
Well, I was
Nice
in a sweatshirt and one of those vests this morning for lacrosse, and I was sweating, so I had to change. It was nice out. It's almost going to be 80 degrees.
Oh, well, it says 73 right now.
Yeah. Well, it feels like 80, I'm telling you.
It's warm out there.
So
It's going to be like this all week, they say.
maybe I have to barbecue some burgers or brats one night.
That's what we're doing for dinner. Barbecuing some burgers and hot dogs.
'Tis the season. Oh, speaking of 'tis the season, you know what? Just to start the show off on a tangent.
Sure. We love tangents.
Oh, you saw. I sent you the picture.
Yeah.
I went out foraging yesterday.
Yeah.
Maddie, I didn't tell you.
He's got a whole collection.
I got a whole bunch of morels.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
Love
It
morels.
was good. I mean, I don't like much,
I don't either.
but I
it's
like
a
to.
cute
But I
thing.
like to forage for 'em. Really fun. Yeah. So
I wouldn't even know what it's like to forage for him.
I mean, you just walk in the woods and go uphill, and
Is that the kind that you just run
see-
around looking for poop and you just pick them up? Off
No,
the
I
dirt?
don't think it's that kind.
Oh.
Definitely not that.
Not the
They just
typical
grow on the.
mushrooms that grow on cow poop.
They just, no, no, none of those. They're just, you start low, and it's usually go on a hill facing the south end because it gets the most sun. And we got a couple spots. It's near the campground, and didn't think we were gonna find anything. And first
Sure enough,
spot
you got a
did
nice bag.
first spot we didn't find any because we were also looking for pheasant back mushrooms, and then I forget the other thing my neighbor was looking for. These other it'll come to me, but we didn't find any of those. But then we went to the second spot up on the I'm not gonna tell you where, but it's a good spot. We found it last year, and in Red Wing, and got up the hills. You want to start low and work your way up because it's easier to see the mushrooms growing because there's always leaves from the trees that fell. And
Is that how they grow? It's from leaf poop then?
no,
Tree poop? Because
I mean,
trees are pooping on the ground with
something.
their leaves, so
Yeah,
then the mushrooms come up out
I
of
guess that's one way to look at it.
it. Just throwing it out there, trying to be
Sure.
different.
Yeah.
Little interesting concepts of this.
Yeah, but no, if you start low and you work your way up, it's easier to see them. I think you're naturally closer to the ground, and just the way they kind of poke them way up through the leaves, because you can literally be walking by them and miss them.
Yeah.
It takes a unique eye to be able to find them, and yeah, man, we hit a good spot and got a bunch of them.
Boatloads of mushrooms. Morel mushrooms.
Morel mushrooms.
There was some money too.
They are.
Honestly,
There's a
spending
lot
to
of
buy
money
'em.
per pound, that's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't measure them, but I mean, had to have 20 some plus mushrooms. It was good.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Sauteed some up last night with some garlic and butter, and
I thought you said you don't eat mushrooms.
I don't eat them. I made them for
For the rest.
Sarah and Zoe, and
Sure.
yeah, they like mushrooms, so I made a little side dish for them, and then I made the youngest a mushroom cheese and bacon omelet this morning.
Okay.
So,
I
anyways,
just call them dirt. I don't think they taste very good. I don't eat mushrooms.
I mean, I don't mind them, but I don't go out of my way to eat.
Yeah, I normally go out of my way to avoid eating them.
Yeah, I mean, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're on like a pizza or
Don't
something.
like the fungus, huh?
Well, it's all about that spongy texture that I'm not a fan of. No thanks.
So
So-
anyways, it was fun. I like enjoying it. It's a good way to get outside and get into nature and get some ticks, do the whole tick search afterwards.
Right, absolutely. So, we like to have a specific segment set up now. We've got to a segment group, and
Yeah.
I think our segments work well. So let's get into our author's corner.
Yeah.
Great to report that Senate file, I think it's 391, the cottage foods bill, was included into the ag omnibus bill. Now everybody's asking, why did I vote against it? Because, of course, one of my bills is in there. But as Drew and I always talk about, if there's one bad bill in an omnibus bill, we're going to be voting against that nonsense.
Yep.
There was a lot of fee increases. It was going to cost farmers a lot more to produce. So that's a hard no for me. Thanks. But I'm excited for the cottage foods part to be in there. And I look forward to people cooking for, baking good baked goods and sending them across the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, it'll be nice to be able to, if I'm assuming that's going to, come back in conference and get added into the House side. I'll probably be a no vote on it, but again, it's not because of that. That's one of the good bills within the omnibus bill. But as you stated, I'm not a huge fan of the omnibus bills either. While I recognize some of the reasoning behind it, that doesn't mean that I agree with it. I'm not going to get on other people for voting for them if that's their purview, but I'm going to continue to push the envelope and try to, steer things in a direction that I'd like respectfully. And not voting on omnibus bills is part of one of the core things that I'm, trying to get away from in the legislature. So I'm going to continue to, be the beacon of hope in the future that we can get rid of these bills.
Yeah, I think the only reason that you would ever catch me voting for an omnibus bill is a relatively valuable one. Those conference committees actually play a huge role in what comes back to the floor. And so if I were to actually be offered an opportunity to be on a conference committee, which I don't know if I will or not, we'll see. But I knew I wasn't going to be on the ag one. I know I'm not going to be on a lot of the other ones. So voting to be on those conference committees, whilst a valuable situation, it's unlikely that I would get added. So why would I vote for it? And that's the only reason I can see doing it. For me, at least, some of my colleagues, I understand that they have different districts, they have different things. And the one thing that I want to stress really important, in my opinion, is that they should vote for their constituents. The number one thing about voting is our job is to represent our constituents. And yes, my constituents know that I am generally not going to vote for omnibus bills. I was campaigning on that. But that's not necessarily how everybody else campaigned. And so I want them to hold their campaign promises. If they told people that they're going to vote and be moderate, then vote and be moderate. I don't agree with it. That's not how I'm going to vote, but that doesn't mean that that's how they have to vote or not vote.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think if you're, like you stated with the omnibus bills, it's a tricky, it's a slippery slope. I understand, again, some of the reasoning, and if somebody's going to vote for it, I'm not going to sit there and, attack them for it. It's one thing, I think, to vote for an omnibus bill when it's going to conference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When it comes back.
Absolutely. Whole nother
So
argument.
I think
but I guess I'm talking about what's going on right now. In
Yeah,
the
exactly.
legislatures. All
Yeah.
these bills are going to conference committee. So if
Yeah.
you're voting for it to get on conference committee,
And so
you do you.
let's touch on that a little bit, because I think that's kind of confusing for people that are listening. And
Sure.
so the way it works currently right now with deadlines and stuff is, we finished up with third deadline in committees, which means at the end of those deadlines, they have to come up with a budget plan that they move forward, both the House side and the Senate side in their respective committees creates their packaged bill of their budget or their policy that they like to move forward. That gets a vote on, either the House or the Senate. And then that goes to a conference where the House side and the Senate side negotiate the language in both of their bills to come back out as one unified bill that goes back to the House and back to the Senate. And that's where we vote it essentially into law at that point. So right now we're in the part where we're voting it to go to conference. So we still have an opportunity for it to come back for final passage, where it would then become law.
Yep.
And so for some members that had voted for them now, I would imagine, I'm not going to speak for them, but I think it's fair to say,
vote against
I think it's fair to say that a lot of them vote for it now, even with some negatives in there, knowing that they're not voting for it as a law that's passed, but just a way to move it forward in the process. So,
Right.
For people that get too caught up in, people voting a certain way, the reality is they're looking at it through a different perspective. And I think, given that same opportunity when it comes back to vote it in a law, there's going to be members that vote a different way than they did going into conference, and that has to be something that's talked about. Whether or not you like that or not, that's just the reality and the reasoning why some members vote a certain way. And it's also like you stated, some people vote despite their prince. I don't want to say despite their principles, but despite
Their personally held beliefs.
their personal held beliefs. Again, because they want to get on a committee, the conference committee, to help negotiate that final language. And that is an accurate statement. I mean, I've talked to members that I don't know if the House has got such strict rules on that as the Senate does. I don't know. You can.
So the House used to, but now you guys, because of your tie and your agreement about the tie, it's an automatic 2-2. So
Okay.
they're going to get picked from the conferee committee. So there's a committee that decides who the conferees are. Most of the time, it's made up by the leadership team and the staff, the chiefs of staff.
Yeah.
So
which they have actually mentioned on the floor. They actually call
Right.
out
Yep.
and
And just-
name those conferences.
it just happened for the first time on the Senate floor last week on Thursday, and then that's why you guys probably just had yours this last week as well, because of course there's a couple bills now that have been told no, they won't be concurring. Which means if you don't concur, you don't take up the Senate language, or in our case, we don't take up the House language, which, by the way, we haven't gotten any House bills yet over to us, which is interesting. You guys have gotten Senate files that you guys didn't concur with, which, again, that's not unexpected. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now the conferences are being created for those bills.
Yeah, there was some weird there, and I asked some questions: is why are we as the House voting on a Senate file?
Yep.
It just seemed odd to me because
So-
we have a House file. There
Yep.
is a
So-
House file to it.
So the
and
joint
it's about timing.
Right. So actually, it's even more important than that. And this is something you probably haven't caught on yet. It took me a little bit to figure out.
I did, but I'll let you explain
Yeah.
it.
So omnibus bills, specifically the committees, about half and half are going to be Senate files and half are going to be House files. And they're picked upon based on the joint agreements. So the House leadership team and the Senate leadership team, the Senate minority, Senate majority, then the House leaders, because of course you guys don't have a majority. All of those individuals get in a room and they decide which bills are going to be House files and which bills are going to be Senate files. But it's also related to the money as well, because the House, technically, any money, big money spending, has to originate in the House. The Senate can't originate the bills with spending, and so that's where that weirdness happens. Some are Senate files, some are House files. That's what's going on, and it's all decided unfortunately behind closed doors. So that's the little bit weird part of that whole.
Yeah.
Not that we need public input per se on which bills are going to go as to which House file, which one's going to be a Senate file. That would be weird to have that kind of interpretation.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, the bills themselves are still going to have plenty. Well, they're supposed to have plenty of public input.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I dropped a new. Well, you and I both dropped a new bill. I dropped a new bill in the House side. Don't know the file number off the top of my head, but it is essentially to repeal the scrap metal license, which has been a huge thing for scrappers and people within the trades that want to recycle metals and copper, and the requirement of getting a license for them has dramatically affected many people's ability to
recycle metal.
Yeah, to recycle metal and get back some of their the revenue that they've spent on materials and whatnot. So part of this is because of criminals, obviously, right? We got people that were
Wait, criminals in Minnesota?
Yeah,
we don't
all
have
over,
those anymore,
right?
do
we? Vandals, like the vandals that don't get charged with crimes.
We keep reducing crimes and stuff, so how are they're not crimes anymore. Now
Yeah,
it's just,
right.
It's just
Yeah,
no-nos, slaps on the wrist. We
Be
don't put people in jail. We don't keep people in jail.
Be
No
a
prison.
good boy, Johnny. Don't do that again.
Don't do that again.
No more scratching Teslas.
And if you steal copper, just make sure you have a copper recycler license, so it's okay for you to steal copper.
Yeah, well, we've got a constituent. He brought it to my attention, and I've met him. I've had coffee at his house a few times, and the one time I was over there, he's got his garage full of a whole bunch of stuff,
Sure.
computer monitors, computers, you name it, and he's out there taking it apart and pulling this part out and that
Pulling
part
the
out, and
metals out.
separating it, and he does that to make a little extra, living, and him and his family are like everybody. It's kind of on a fixed income. You can't just pull money, out of your ass whenever you want extra money or vacation
can't.
money or something that comes up,
Sure.
emergency, right? So
No.
you got to be smart and proactive and not be afraid to do a little extra work. And this is a guy who, does work online and tries to find things that people are getting rid of, or as he's driving throughout the day, he sees, a freebie and picks it up and, again, does his best to recycle and scrap. And, now he is going to be one of those people that's required to get a license to be able to just do a hobby.
Well, and
All because of criminals, right?
I think,
and I don't think
I
that's
think the
right.
most important thing about this license that we should actually be able to gain some support on from strange allies, or as they say, strange bedfellows, whatever you want to call it. The environmentalists should actually support our bill.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because the easier it is to recycle metal is the easier and the better it is for the environment. Because if we're recycling metal, we don't have to worry about digging for it. Now, of course, I heavily support our mining industry here in the state of Minnesota. I think that we should be mining in northern Minnesota, where that is literally their life force. That's what they should be doing. And
Yeah.
and honestly, we're hoping that President Trump comes along and gets some of those permits approved so that they can get back to mining.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's going to cost the state of Minnesota a lot of money not to mine.
Well, yeah. Well, and here's breaking news: criminals don't follow laws.
Right. So a permit, strangely, doesn't matter to those criminals.
So we've got
Although the people in Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, and North Dakota are greatly appreciative of this permit, because what it does is it allows those criminals to take the scrap over to other states.
Well, and again, it would just it just then requires the criminal to just find a middleman that has the license and get undercut, right? So
Yep.
if a person could go to a scrapper and get paid, I don't know, $100, they're going to find somebody that's going to, now they're not going to be able to do that. So they're going to find somebody who's going to give them 50, which means they got to go steal more
Right.
to get the 100. So you're really incentivizing crime even more. You're not stopping them because, newsflash, they're criminals. They don't follow the law.
That's the whole reason they're criminals.
Let's create more law. They'll listen this time.
Right.
Genius.
So,
So that'll be a fun one.
it'll be interesting. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, I've
I look
talked
forward to
to
you
some,
getting a hearing.
I've talked to some people about it, and it's got a lot of support.
Oh, absolutely. From all over the place.
Word on the streets is that we may not even have to wait for a committee.
That'd be all right. We could find out if we can get it into something.
We'll see what happens.
So
If it's an omnibus bill, I'm going to be a no. But
speaking of bills, getting hearings still, we had a committee hearing on Thursday in the Senate. Normally after third deadline, you don't do that. But in this case, we got to take care of those special interest groups here in Minnesota. And if the Democrats control the committees, they're going to give something a hearing, even if it has no chance of going anywhere, because we have to deceive the public and tell them that there's a possibility of these things moving forward. We ended up hearing another Uber and Lyft bill yet again. This time related to specifically unionizing the employees, which, again, they're not supposed to be employees at the state level or at the business. You're supposed to be contract labor, but now we're going to start treating them like employees even more. We're going to give them the opportunity to unionize, to work against Uber and Lyft and all the other TNCs, which for me, I don't understand. I don't understand the idea of needing to do that. So from my perspective, they already have a collective bargaining agreement using the state. There's no reason to create new ones. But that's what the hearing was Thursday morning. The Uber and Lyft people came and they talked, and they said they don't have a current position on the bill. They are concerned that it will actually backtrack and make it go worse. It was one of the best negotiated, according to both sides, one of the hardest negotiated agreements in the history of any state. We are now the highest paid state in the state of Minnesota, or in the country. Sorry, we are the highest paid state in the country for Uber and Lyft drivers. The average Uber and Lyft driver makes $58 an hour when they are driving clients in their vehicles. So if they have a rider, they are making roughly $58 an hour. They have a lot of benefits that they're not supposed to have.
Well, and the problem is these people don't get it. Okay, they're clueless because they clearly haven't been to California. Okay, they have never heard of Waymo. Matt, maybe you could pull up a Waymo video. This is a driverless car. So it's an Uber that I've never done it, but I've seen them when I was in California. You see them all over. Yep. And they're driverless Uber. You request the ride, a car pulls up, nobody in it, and you just get in the back seat and it takes you to your destination.
What if you got in the front seat?
I mean, maybe you could, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
be interesting.
Sure. Yeah, I guess maybe you just want more room in the back. There you go. That's a Waymo. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Look at all those cameras on that thing.
Yeah.
We meet Waymo One. So it's a driving service. But
yeah, it's an Uber with no person in it. So like you want to price out,
those cameras are going to end up being cheaper long term.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, what do you mean? It will be way cheaper. You don't have to deal with somebody complaining about getting, wanting to unionize. Like, I just don't get it. For all we know, the people that are pushing Waymo are pushing the union. You never know. Why wouldn't they?
It could be.
They want to just get rid of Uber and then they'll solve another problem. Here, we got Waymo. We'll just do this.
So that's been my committee sludge. I'm sure you've kind of got stuff going with taxes and all that fun stuff. But
the committee sludge we had this week is the House Democrats and the House Republicans in the education side had negotiated a education finance bill. And we were set to hear that bill on the House floor on Friday. And come Wednesday, apparently Democrats had been contacted by the SEIU union and Education Minnesota and told them that by no means were they allowed to vote on this bill. And so they caucused about that. And well, let me take a step back. Wednesday morning, after recess on the House floor, the Rules Committee got together, and there are multiple members within the Democrat side that then the whole party had reneged on that agreement, and were making arguments within Rules to not adopt the floor for Friday. The schedule for Friday, which was to hear that, in their argument was that Republicans started a coup in the beginning of the year, because they didn't show up to work.
Started a coup.
Yeah, because we showed up on time, and they, are pushing unemployment insurance, so they wanted
the coup is their reasoning now for not passing a bill now.
Yeah,
which, by the way, both sides of the aisle are there.
And the main reason why they're upset in that is because we have been very vocal on the Republican side of cutting unemployment insurance. Okay. Because it is causing,
it's causing massive costs to school districts.
Absolutely. Yep. And essentially they're paying
people to not go to work.
Exactly. We are trying on the Republican side, we are trying to cut mandates to fund schools, and they're trying to cut schools to fund mandates.
Well, and I think the more important connection that I like to add, one more connection, is that we now don't have enough money to cover teachers' pensions.
Correct.
And so if we were to cut some of these mandates, we might actually have enough funding to help the teachers, who are the most important part of our whole system. And
in this agreement that they made, we actually funded unemployment insurance at the tune of $30 million for 2025, which would take care of it. But we also had a sunset clause where unemployment insurance would be repealed after the summer of 2028. And so that was the agreement. And that is what the SEIU union and Education Minnesota had pushed back and told the Democrats that they absolutely, under zero circumstances, could vote for that bill. So there is a mutiny right now on the Democrat side of the House, and they're pushing back. And now, refusing to agree to the House finance, the education finance bill that has already been pre-negotiated. So,
Well, and the hardest part I have with that whole thing is it's like, yet again, we have special interest groups controlling what legislators are doing.
yep.
We don't have what the constituency wants. The constituency actually wants us. The reason why we're in the tie, why 201 legislators are just divided by one vote in the legislature, the reason it's like that is because constituents have had enough. They're done with the nonsensical left versus right, right versus left fighting. They want us to represent them, not to represent special interest groups. They want us to actually go up there, work for the people, and understand that, yes, whilst we have differing views, you and I, very much liberty-minded, very much conservative, lower government, less government, but they want us to go up there and actually work together and figure out how to, A, represent our district, which is the liberty-minded district, and then also defend, also work the best for those people, right? And they want us to defend liberty, but at the same time understand how to work together.
Yeah, and I mean,
And we can, right? Like it's totally doable. How else do you get, like I said, my voting record last year is an example of what our district wants. It wants us to work together. I am the fourth most bipartisan senator in the state of Minnesota. But I also scored in the top 10 for LEA, which is the legislative group that is very conservative. I held my conservative values, and I still managed to work with people.
yeah, I think we do. There is some opportunity for us to work together, but by most things, we're way off because
absolutely.
the Democrats are controlled by the special interest groups. They're controlled
100%.
by the unions. They're 100%, refuse to, they gaslight the constituent base by saying that they're pro-labor, but reality, they're pro-union, right?
Yeah.
And the unions that in reality don't always have the best interest for their workers.
And that's the thing that bothers me the most is it's amazing. And I think unions are just as politically charged as we are in the legislature. I think that there's, different factions in each union that support different things. And unfortunately, sometimes the ones at the top don't represent the ones that are working.
Yeah. And I'm not saying every union because there are definitely some good unions out there, but Education Minnesota does not have the best interest at teachers.
And those are the ones that I'm most concerned with, right? They're up there killing the ed policy bill that you're working on to try and save some money so that you guys can actually do something with the teachers' pensions.
Yeah,
and yet they're the ones killing the bill
that
would make it so that you could possibly help the teachers with their pension plan.
They are a lobbying firm. They don't advocate for teachers. They to be honest with you, they flat out lie.
They lobby for your ideology.
Lie and they manipulate the truth with their teachers. I've had conversations with teachers. I've talked to them about the things we're working on, and then the letters that they get back from their union leaders, and not their local unions, but the Education Minnesota union is flat out lies.
Yeah.
I mean, they say that we're lying. In reality, it is so not true, and they gaslight their members, and it's sad. And I think there's a lot of teachers who are waking up. We saw a school district in Becker, Minnesota, that is pushing back against unions. It was close to winning. It was a 40-60 vote. And so teachers are starting to understand and take back power and realize that, sometimes their union fees are being paid for things that don't always best represent them. And it's sad that the representatives on the Democrat side would rather support these outside agencies than their constituents and families and school districts, because we're at a budget crisis here.
100%.
And if we don't fix it, districts are going to be continued to have to beg, kick, and scream for their voters to bail them out in their local districts by passing levies, which, in our district, we've had the levy get turned down in Farmington 2 consecutive elections in a row. So for the last 4 years, voters have said, no, it's not our problem. You need to fix it at the legislature, which I full-heartedly agree with and respect, because we shouldn't have to continue to put it on the backs and the property taxes of our local voters, when in reality we have a a problem not with how much money we spend. I mean, it is a problem. It's not the fact that we're not throwing enough money at education. It's the fact that we don't have funding flexibility. We don't have local control. We're siloing the money and making it more and more difficult. We have too many unfunded mandates, and we just pass that along to our local residents, and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
And until we can, work together, which unfortunately, because by many members of the left are controlled by these special interest groups, we're going to continue to not be able to work together, and they're going to continue to gaslight their voters until voters start waking up in these swing districts that are sitting Democrat, that we flip those seats red.
Well, let's
and
talk
we could
about
actually do something different.
let's talk about gaslighting voters. Let's get into that floor war discussion. This is something that's been happening on the Senate floor for the last couple weeks, and it comes from both sides. I'm going to be completely honest. It comes from both sides. We have a tendency to introduce these amendments right on the floor. We know that either A, they're going to pass, or B, they're not going to pass. And a lot of the ones that we know aren't going to pass are there for what I like to call gotcha votes. They're votes that are targeted specifically at certain senators. In this case, in the Senate floor, it's targeted at certain senators just to make them take bad votes. Now, of course, in our case, we are currently until Tuesday. Tuesday, by the way, is when our new Senator Carrie Heinzman, will be sworn in from Senate District 6. She'll be sworn in Tuesday morning at 11:15. So that'll be a big deal, and the reason why that's super important is this. Currently on the Senate floor, we have 34 votes, we have 34 votes from the Democrats and 32 votes for the Republicans. And so some of these Democrat votes can get their vote off on bad amendments, or in their case, good amendments, but bad amendments for them to vote for or vote against for their district. And so every week all week we had 33-33. A lot of amendments would die in a tie. And it would be because they were letting one of their members vote for that amendment, even though they didn't want it to go on the bill. A lot of those amendments should have been on the bill.
Judy Fakeburger?
Judy Seeberger. Yep.
Seeberger.
She's up there just north of our district.
Way off.
She represents the Hastings community, and that's where we're at.
Did she get endorsed by a Republican?
She did. Mr. Tony Juergens.
Tony Juergens. What a
He was the House rep.
jerk.
Yeah. So
Juergens.
what a weird situation. But
What a
so,
douchebag.
and what's hard is that now I've gotten to know Judy a little bit, and sometimes I think she does have her ideas are more closely aligned with our own at times. And then at other times I'm like, man, you're going all the wrong way. But the one thing that I don't envy her on is that her vote is, she's being held hostage. Like, she feels like she has to vote with her party. And that's something I'll never feel. I've always told my party up front, like, hey, I'm not going to vote with you just because you want me to vote with you. And in fact, didn't vote with her, with our party on a couple different votes that I felt like was pretty silly. We had a couple of votes where it was making jaywalking more illegal. You can't walk across the street, making it more illegal.
Yeah,
I thought
that's
it was
crazy.
silly.
Look both sides.
Right.
Yep, you're
we're
good.
So it was a little weird, but and Senator Howell will get mad at me for saying this, but that's the reality. Is I couldn't vote for an amendment that would make something that's already against the rules or against the law more illegal.
You know how many people jaywalk at the Capitol?
I'm aware.
I see it all the time.
I've almost hit a few of them because they come popping out of between two cars, and
Give
you're
me-
driving down the road, and it's just like, oh, there they are. Okay.
Do
Yeah.
people in like Minneapolis get run over all the time? Or
I mean,
what's the reasoning?
So the reasoning is because so to give Senator Howe's full circle definition as to why his amendment came forward and was important to him is because police officers right now, if something happens to so here's where it goes. We have to go down the police officers' side of the argument. And so if I'm walking across the street and I'm walking right through the middle of the street, jaywalking as we like to call it, and I get hit by a car. Now, if a police officer was just down the street, this police officer is actually at fault for not stopping me from doing that. And that's the one part of the caveat of why he was offering that, is because the officer now, because he wasn't enforcing the law, that is the law, can now be liable for what happens to me and what happens to the person driving the vehicle. So that was his argument. Do I agree with it? No, I think it's silly to make jaywalking more illegal. And giving him even more perspective on giving me tickets. I should take responsibility. And see, this is where it all circles back to lawyers and liability. You know, again, lawyers serve a purpose, but in this case, it feels like they're over intruding into our lives. We should take on some responsibility. I chose to walk across that street. If I get hit by a car, that's my stupidity, not someone else's. And vice versa. If a person decides to run me over because they decided to accelerate and hit me, even though they had time to let me get through, also really silly. But those are the situations that we're in, and that's, I think, his explanation as to why he supported the amendment. I don't agree. I don't think that it was necessary, and I voted against it. So when people say I don't vote, when people say I vote 100% with my party, that is not an accurate statement. But that brings us to another amendment.
Well, yeah, I would say I've already been essentially recognized as Mr. No.
Well, hey, if you vote no on everything, it's definitely better to vote no than to vote yes. In my
Yeah.
opinion, if you don't know what something is, vote no. When in doubt, vote no.
I got a couple standing ovations the other day when I voted green. They're like, Representative Roach, you vote yes. I feel honored. I'm like, well, bring me something good to vote on, and I'll give you my blessing.
Yep,
I'll give you a yay vote.
Yep. So I know the one you wanted to talk about was on the Senate floor, the one that's the worst of the floor battles most recently, and the one that negatively impacts people the most, at least in our district. We've heard a lot about it.
Absolutely.
That's Senate File 1740.
1740, Amendment 29. All homeschool families are well aware of this amendment.
As a homeschool family myself, I'm well aware of what this is going to do.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bad amendment.
Terrible amendment. I have no idea. This is, again,
so let me
government
describe
I'll let you describe it, but government overreach at its
100%,
finest, as
100%.
we realize as what's happening here for people. I'm sure they're aware.
So why don't I describe the gotcha part of the amendment?
Yeah,
and
I just
then
want
you
to
can
give
describe the government overreach. How's that?
Sure. I just wanted to touch base on the reason why this is happening is in part because Governor Walz, in his proposal and other things, is going after families who have decided
to move away from public schools.
Move away from public schools and have education freedom their number one choice.
Absolutely.
Right?
They're trying to move into an
is
education system that they can support and that actually supports their family the way they want it to support their family.
correct. And this is a way of in a way
This is
of
another way of
punishing
punishing
people.
those people for
Right.
making that decision. So let me describe the gotcha part of the amendment, and we'll get into it even more here with the liberal tiers section. But let's talk about the first part of it. And so Senator Erin May Quaid brought this amendment. She was the chief author of this amendment, and it was absolutely the worst amendment possible. And the reason why it's a gotcha is I already got messages about this, of course. I voted no on the amendment. Terrible amendment. The first half of the amendment I'm going to let Drew take care of because he's going to talk to you about why it's an infringement and government overreach. I'm going to talk to you about the gotcha part. The end part of the amendment, the second half of the amendment, was talking about crimes and criminals. Basically stating that in the amendment it was talking, and this is the only part that Senator May Quaid talked about, by the way. This is the gaslighting, as you might say. Telling us how terrible we are as Republicans because we voted against this amendment. Also, the second half of the amendment was about saying that you can't have people who are criminals teach homeschool. So we don't want child molesters. We don't want sex offenders. We don't want anybody like that to be able to teach homeschool. That was the purpose of the amendment. It was talking about that, and it said you cannot, and it labeled off all of the crimes. Now the problem is that in the amendment, even this part of the gotcha amendment has an error. Even if you were questioned to have done these crimes, not that you have any evidence to support that you were a criminal, but if you had any question or any doubt that you might have been doing these crimes, that's in there. So if you've been blamed for it, if you've been even thought of, as maybe a hint of this, you've done these things, you cannot teach your kids at home. That's what it says. So it's already infringing on thought crimes. It's already infringing on, fake allegations, making it so that if somebody accused you of doing these things, you couldn't possibly teach homeschool. That's that part. Now, do I want criminals teaching my kids at home or teaching any kids at home? No, I don't want criminals teaching kids at home. You're absolutely right. But if the person has served their time, has changed their ways, is actually a reformed citizen, and they choose that public school is not right for their kids, then they should have the right to teach their kids. It's as simple as that. Because of all people, they probably can teach their kids more important life lessons than anyone else in the world. Because they've learned what life is and what the bad side of life is, and they can teach the kids not to do those things. So that's the gotcha part. Now I'm going to let you explain the first half of the amendment, which is the part that nobody realized how bad it was.
Well, again, it's just taking away control from parents and families, right? And telling them what they can and cannot do and how they educate their children. And it's not the government's rule, they have no authority or jurisdiction over that. And again, this is to simply target individuals, families who have taken it upon them their own ability to decide what's best education for their kids. Period. So the fact that this was even brought to try to attack those families and force them back into the public school system and put gotchas in place and try to make them out to be criminals, or they're trying to set their kids up for failure, or however they want to try to label this, which is exactly what they do, is ridiculous, and it's uncalled for. And I was the second I heard about this was, one, I just couldn't believe that it was even brought up and brought to the floor, and why we're going after these whole homeschool families, which when you pull up reports and you see the testing, kids that go to homeschool by and large do much better than other students, whether it be private, public, or charter schools. These families have an inherent right to be able to do that, and we support them 100%. So,
well, and my family is a homeschool family. My wife teaches both of our daughters. It's a challenge some days, but most days it's most rewarding thing, because you know what, I get to come home. My kids are already home. I get to see them. They can come to work. So when I'm on the floor and then I'm at my clinic, and honestly, I get to be able to see them more often than I've ever gotten to see them. When they were in school and when they were in daycare, I would see my kids for less than an hour a day. It was pretty rough. And now that they get to be homeschooled, now that my wife's taking on that challenge, and I have to say thank you to her every single time, because what she does, I think even a saint wouldn't want to do. So very saintly in that regard, in the fact that she's willing to take on this challenge. And there's bad days and there's good days. Now, but the thing is, the other half of that amendment that Drew's kind of getting into, and I'll describe it even more so. And the reason, so I know there was a lot of questions as to why a bunch of senators voted for it on the Republican side. And it's because we were only described the second half, the part that I was just talking about, the gotcha part. That was the only part that she talked about. And she didn't talk about the other half of the amendment. And so on the Senate floor, it's customary to actually describe your entire amendment. And so that way people don't have to grab a piece of paper and sit there and read it and yell and scream and say, wait, like they want time to read it and digest it. The appropriate thing for Senator May Quade to have done would have been to read the exact language, or at least the exact purpose of the amendment. She would have gone through the whole thing. She only read the second half, and she did that on purpose. Gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
It's to gaslight. Now, the first half is actually the part that most homeschools are most upset about. And the reason is the first half talks about where homeschools can be. It has to be at your residence. It can't be anywhere else. Which is inaccurate. You can homeschool from anywhere. You can teach your kids, because your home is not defined by the four walls of your residence. Your home is your family. Your home is where you spend your time together.
Well, and homeschool has evolved. It's not what it used to be, where just you were taught by your mom or a relative. Right. They have homeschool co-ops now, where people come together as a community, and they go to a co-op and they have a communal learning.
So not only co-ops, right? So co-ops are a big deal. I really like co-ops. My daughters aren't in a co-op at the moment. They are in a thing called a homeschool meetup group, which is very similar to a co-op. And so what we do is our daughters get together every Friday with the rest of the homeschool families from around the area, and they do activities together and they learn together. So like one week they were building bridges with MnDOT, right? So MnDOT was participating in our homeschool group. They showed them how to build bridges and why bridges worked the way they do. That's one of the activities. The activity that just happened this last Friday, we were learning, and we did an art program. We actually had an art show on Friday evening. all of our kids, all of the homeschool kids that wanted to participate, they made their own art projects, and then we actually had an art gallery. We rented out the room at the library here in Lonsdale, and they put up their artwork, and people from the community were able to come see these kids' amazing different art projects. It was one of the coolest things. But with this new amendment, we wouldn't be allowed to do that,
Yeah.
and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
So that in and of a nutshell is why that amendment's so bad. But then, like I said, the reason why those people voted for it, and I don't want to put words in their mouth and discuss that too far, because of course they need to defend their own votes and understand their own votes. But the reason they voted for it was the gotcha half. They didn't know that this other half was in there because, of course, Senator McQuaid intentionally left that information out. And so I would like to speak, at least to a degree, for those people and realize they only voted for the amendment because they thought they were voting for the criminal stuff. Now, of course, I already described why that even was bad, because, of course, what if the person's reformed? What if the person's fine now? They should still be able to teach homeschool.
There are plenty of homeschool families whose parents have
Right.
made a poor decision or had a mistake happen early on in their
Absolutely.
life before they had
Yep.
children, and they shouldn't be punished their
100%.
entire life because of one
Well,
bad
and
mistake. I've
more
got
importantly, their kids
friends
shouldn't
in that
be.
situation, and that's not who you are as an individual. Even if it happened when you had kids, I mean,
Right.
plenty of people have made mistakes. We're not here to just again, control people's
It's
lives.
not
And
the
you make a
government's
mistake,
job.
there's ripple effects for years, and I mean, it's just
Right.
not, like you said, not government's role at all.
And like you were saying, it's punishing these people, but it's not even punishing those people. Those people are getting punished. They've been through their punishment. They've served their time, those things like that.
Punishing their
But
kids.
now you're punishing their children. You're taking their children's rights away. And that's not even, the kid didn't do anything wrong. And so that's where I'm at. That's the gotcha amendment there. We've had a bunch of other gotcha amendments. We had an amendment the other day. Senator McQuaid, again, because she's apparently the queen of gotcha amendments, decided to offer an amendment that we can't have an autism registry that requires us to report all this data to other people. Well, so HIPAA laws exist. We have privacy laws in existence. Whilst they're not perfect, they do exist. And in Minnesota statute, we have other laws that are very similar to HIPAA that require us to anonymize and keep that stuff anonymous. We can't give out public information. As a healthcare provider myself, I will tell you right now, we cannot give identifying information about our patients to anyone without express written consent from the patient saying that we can. The only time we can share any sort of information is if the insurance company is involved and the patient signs a waiver at the beginning. The very first visit you go to your doctor, you sign your HIPAA form saying that the only time I can share your information is with the person who is going to be paying for it. So if you want your insurance company to pay for it, you've already signed a waiver saying that we can share that information with your insurance company. That's the only time. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no other time. I can't talk to you about any of my patients. I can't tell you who they are. I can't tell you why they were here. That's illegal.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important for viewers to realize too that there's a set of rules in the House and a set of the rules in the Senate. In the House side, we have to have we don't get to have amendments brought forth on the floor.
Right. And see, that's what
have to
happens.
Those amendments need to be brought forward 24 hours before. I think it's noon the
noon
day
the day
before the
right,
floor.
yep.
So
Yep.
members already know when I come into floor for tomorrow, per se, I already can look up and see what amendments are being brought on the bills that were be on the floor that is part of the agenda, and I can kind of get some
You
further
can have
insight
an idea before you
further insight. Where in the Senate side in particular,
They're
members
surprised.
can bring amendments,
the
from
day
the
of in the minute, right?
Yeah, from the floor. And I think and I don't know why this doesn't happen, and maybe it does. I don't sit on the Senate, and because I'm in the House now, I don't watch a whole lot of the Senate proceedings like I have previously. But I would assume in some cases members would be inclined to take a recess so they could fully gather the information on said amendment if it's a larger amendment.
Yeah, so that's the hardest part about our Senate, right? Is that in order to have a recess, you have to have 34 votes, no matter what.
Sure.
Right? To go to recess, you have to have a majority. Well, the problem is that we get these gotcha amendments, right? That we had no idea. We know there's amendments at the desk, right? Like everybody can look at the desk and see a stack of amendments sitting there. we know what we're bringing, what our team is bringing, right? As I like to call it, this is a team game. This is a team sport sometimes. Well, we know what's coming from our side for the most part. We don't know what's coming from the other side.
No surprises.
Yeah, there's no surprises normally from our side. Sometimes there is. I mean, I've had a few votes where it's like, did you really just bring that? Like, I would have told you 2 hours ago that I wasn't voting for that if you shouldn't have brought that in the first place. But then we get these surprise ones. And then even more crazy, like, I don't know how it is in the House, but we can do oral amendments on the fly, right? Like, so even if we have amendments and we see the amendment ahead of time, we know it's coming, we can still do oral amendments to the amendment on the Senate floor. And there's no rules about that because, in all honesty, I'd rather have it open, right? Like the whole purpose of these laws or these amendment processes and these bills, I think the 24-hour rule in the House, whilst beneficial because it gives you an opportunity to look up everything and understand what you're going in to vote on. I also think that if on the fly, I'm listening to your debate and I hear you say something and I go, wait a second, that's not how that amendment's going to go.
Yeah.
I want to be able to amend it or come up with an amendment to that amendment or to the bill itself. If something in the bill itself finally sounds weird, I want to be able to come up with that on the fly.
Yeah.
Normally takes about 10 to 15 minutes. And honestly, we can do those amendments pretty quickly. Our staff is amazing, by the way, at the Senate. I'm going to give them a shout out. They're always so great. That we can get amendments pretty quickly and fixing those things, especially after debating. So like we had that scuba divers bill, a few weeks ago. And I had an amendment that I brought. Well, then the chief author, she liked my amendment, but she really didn't like just one piece. Well, we did an oral amendment. We fixed it on the fly.
Yeah.
And it's better to be able to do that, in my opinion. You're going to get better legislation long term, but it also leaves open, like you said, the hole to the gotcha amendments. It does. And so you got to slow down sometimes when somebody brings an amendment. It's best to slow down. But of course, like you said, it would be great if we could recess. Well, unfortunately, we don't control the votes. We don't get to decide if we get to recess or not. In fact, as a joke, the Senate floor, we decided to do after the labor bill, which was now we're going to mandate breaks every 4 hours for employees. Of course, one of our senators stood up and said, well, we need to take a 15-minute paid recess so that we can have our 15-minute paid break. Otherwise, I'm going to be suing the Senate for $1,000 because that's currently in the labor bill for the Senate version. So just as a heads up, that's coming into you guys here soon.
Oh, okay.
It's in the jobs and labor bill.
Wow, interesting.
So, yeah. So that's the floor war. Let's get into our favorite segment because it'll connect right to what we were just talking about. Is that a baby I hear crying? Or is that a liberal crying?
It's a liberal.
There we go. We've got the liberals crying. We're into liberal tears. The best part of the section. And here we go. Matt, let's bring that up. Let's make it so that Drew can hear what Senator May Quaid had to say about her gotcha amendments.
Oh, no sound.
I will be fighting like hell to prevent a registry of kids and people with autism with everything I have. I will be introducing an amendment to 4 different omnibus.
I introduced the amendment to the first omnibus bill today, and here's how that vote turned out. Every single Republican voted against it. And Abler, Coleman, and Housley were all sitting on the floor and didn't vote on it. They refused to vote on it, which I'm sorry, but would be very, very terrifying for any family or person with autism who lives in their community. But the amendment did pass. Every Democrat voted for it in the Senate. It is in the Judiciary bill. I will introduce it again for the Human Services bill, and hopefully we can get more people to vote for it because this has to go on. We have to prevent any companies, healthcare providers, the government of Minnesota from transmitting identifiable information on people with autism for a registry. Like, we have to. I will die on this hill. Also, here was the amendment. It says a business, healthcare provider, or government entity must not disseminate identifying data on an individual, including their names, their birth dates, their addresses, their telephone numbers, or email addresses, or any other data that could be reasonably used to identify an individual for a registry. This is the amendment that no Republican could vote for. This is the amendment. Pause to read. So take a good look. Find your state senator up here and find how they voted. And if they didn't vote how you'd want them to, reach out to them, let them know. They will have another opportunity to vote on that amendment. It'll come up in the Human Services bill. Remember when I said this?
Yeah, we're all good there. That's just restarting now. There you go, Drew.
Yeah, I don't understand the point of it. I mean, she's trying to essentially make it seem like RFK, who is trying to find out why we have so much an increase in autism, which I believe is like in California, or maybe it's the country, it's like 1 in every 36 kids now
Yep.
has autism.
Yep, it's pretty high.
It's
I don't
it's
know if that's the exact
extreme.
number, but
Sure.
It's
so
definitely
don't,
it's definitely
don't quote
less.
me on it, but it's
It's
very
definitely getting
high.
into the realm of the 1 in 100 or less, like or
Um,
more, I should say. It's the statistics are getting really bad.
I think it's depending on where you're from, it may be different.
Well,
but
you know, the only state in the union that mandates vaccines is the state that you mentioned, California.
correct. So
So
I'm
could
not.
be
I'm not
could be that
saying
state
why
that
or why not. But the
just saying.
point is if
Not
we
saying
want to
why or why
find
not either.
if we want to find out how those how autism has become so prominent now, it's not about creating a registry so we can attack these families, but it's to find out solutions and to get willing participants that want to find out the answer.
Right.
There's many of families out there that may have an opinion why their child has autism, and some families out there that, while they have an understanding of what they think, that may not be the reality or the truth. So why not dig a little deeper, do more research, and find out if there is a correlation somewhere that hasn't been, found yet. And so the purpose of, I think this research into autism isn't there as a negative to try to like isolate these families or make them feel terrible or whatever,
there's-
but it's to try to find a solution as to why is this such a common occurrence now. you
Well,
know?
and the thing that she's trying to link it to, and the thing that bothers me the most, is if you watch a couple of her other videos, she's trying to link it to like Nazi Germany,
Correct.
trying to keep a registry, a list, an ongoing list of people. No, RFK Jr. did not say that. If you go back and watch his entire discussion around autism, it's exactly what you were saying. He's trying to find a solution to a problem. We have a problem, a disease, what would hopefully be a preventable disease in the future. Autism
Yeah.
is becoming more and more prevalent. And he's asking the question, why? Why is it becoming more prevalent? And yes, he's got some ideas. And whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter at this point, because the only way we find out is if we start researching and studying why. And right now, without talking to the people who have autism, you never will get to the bottom of why, because you
Correct.
never can. So the registry, as he's claiming, or as she's claiming, the registry, as she's claiming, is not a registry.
No.
It is a chance to find out and ask the individuals what's going on, what's the perspective, what's happening. And if I could add to that information, I would say, hey, if anybody that I know that has autism, I don't want your registration information. I don't want your information public. None of it should be public, nor will it ever be. Again, going back to HIPAA and Minnesota privacy laws, it will never be public. If you personally want to participate in the discussion, then you should reach out to them. Let them know that you want to participate, because then that way we can help find a cure or find a solution to what's causing autism.
But I think that's in question now, right? Because if this were to pass, then
Now
that
you won't be able to reach
then
out.
that registry, quote unquote, wouldn't be able to be done at the state level.
Well, it wouldn't be able to be done at the federal level, because this state law would supersede a federal ability. You would no longer be able to have access to that information.
Well, you're right. The outside entity wouldn't have access, but
Sure.
it would require the families to do all the legwork
Yep,
to get
the
that
families would have to do
information
the work.
versus an in between. And
Yep.
that's what this is preventing.
Well, and the whole purpose of what RFK Jr. was trying to do, from what I understand, is he's just using the contact information to reach out and ask them, would you like to participate?
Yeah.
That was my interpretation of what happened. And they blew it out of proportion using media,
Yeah.
of course. They made it sound like he wanted to create some national registry of every person that might or might not have autism.
Yeah, I mean, if families are
I know.
if families are happy, it scared me. If families are happy with the current answers that they have and reasons why their child has autism, if they're happy or
comfortable with the situation.
comfortable with that narrative or that truth, that's fine. Let them be.
Right.
But why not just do a little, more investigation and find out if it runs deeper than what they believe.
And only those that want to participate should participate.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, if I didn't know that it was already illegal to share that information, I would have probably been a yes vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, yeah, your privacy matters to me.
100%.
But I also, as a healthcare provider, understand that there's no reason to vote for another law that's going to do the same thing as the law is already doing.
Yeah.
Zero reason to put more laws on the books.
This kind of, made me think too. We had Representative Lee Finke on the floor the other day go on an Elon Musk rant. So Elon, if you're listening, which I'm sure he does.
Yeah, he loves our show.
I think you might have a slander or a liable case against Representative Finke because he claimed that you were trying to take out transgender, that your whole goal of being involved in politics is to eradicate transgenders from the planet.
Oh, boy.
It's been proven. That's what he said.
Well, you and I have talked about our position on this. Leave our children alone. Leave the minors alone. And if as an adult you decide to do whatever you want to do to your body, unfortunately, that's your choice. Go ahead. Go do it. That's not an unfortunate thing. It's actually great. It's the best part about our country. As an adult, you have the right to choose what you want to do to yourself.
Yeah. So to the Minnesota Reformer, if you're listening this week, get this on to Elon Musk so we can get a case against the state representative for libel or slander. That's your job.
Hey, speaking of Representative Finke, isn't there another article that would fit into this liberal tears moment here?
Which one?
Bring it on, Matt. Let's do it.
Another one.
This?
Yeah, this one. Let's do this one.
Which
Let's
one?
talk about this one. Did you know we have slavery in the state of Minnesota still?
Oh, yes. We're all tax slaves. Don't you know?
I don't think that's what Representative Finke's claiming.
Oh, okay. Please
No,
educate me. I missed this one.
You probably missed this post. So, end slavery in Minnesota. WTF. Lee for Minnesota. What drugs are you on? Hormone blockers block your brain cells. What slaves your child ones maybe? So, Representative Finke is claiming that we needed to make a movement to end slavery in Minnesota. Did you know that incarcerated individuals are actually slaves?
Oh, I do recall this. Is this okay?
This is because
I remember this now.
This is because we've decided now. Representative Finke has decided that we need to pay our incarcerated members that are working jobs. By the way, those jobs pay for their. Let me be very specific here. Those jobs literally pay for their housing. The jobs are there for them to pay their housing. They don't get paid very much extra money on top of the cost of housing because they don't know. They need to pay for their housing. And so, but they still make more money than they think they do.
Well, I mean, Lee Finke would know this if he was on the public safety committee, but he's not. Actually, the state of Minnesota, because they're slaves, apparently.
Careful now. You're
criminals.
using pronouns that are going to get us another HR complaint.
Get over it.
I just thought I'd
Suck
make
it up,
sure
Buttercup.
Point out the fact that we're being
I
rude.
go by tall black man, so I'm gonna be a basketball player.
Yeah, you're like 6'10", right?
It's my next, career
If I
move.
hang on, let me just.
Look at that.
You got to get taller.
Getting taller.
Look at that.
Seen the movie Big?
You are. I'm 6'2". Look
I'm
how
gonna
tall
go-
Drew is.
I'm gonna go play that machine.
He's like 6'6".
on the
Look
pier.
how tall he is. 6'6". Hang on. Okay, sorry, Drew.
Damn.
Putting the reality back in.
Put my docs on.
Hang on, I'll get you a couple phone books. We'll make it look the same.
You lost my train of thought now. What was I saying?
Well, you were just
Damn you, Bill.
gotta mess with you. So slavery. We were talking about slavery. We were talking
Oh,
about
thank you.
inmates.
She does look like a man, though. I just need to say it myself. I cannot. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
you're fine, Drew.
So my point was,
So
is
Representative
because
Lee Chris Finke.
I didn't know that slaves could make phone calls on the dime of the
Taxpayers?
The taxpayers. Minnesota last year spent over $3 million funding phone calls for criminals in jail.
That's another bill that I co-authored. by the way.
$3 million. We actually had an amendment on the floor that would at least cut that down a little bit to $2.4 million and send $700,000 to correctional officers so that they could have pay raises.
Well,
But that
Representative Steer, just so you
did
know, I
not
did drop
pass.
your bill in the Senate as of Thursday. So
Rep
I am-
Steer, you mean
yeah,
Chief Steer?
Chief Steer.
What about him?
He sent me over a bill. He asked me if I would chief author a bill to take away the states paying for phone calls.
Interesting.
So-
Why did he send that over to you?
I would assume because I represent the north half of New Prague and he represents the south half. So he probably thought, hey, Liskey, he sounds like he'd be a good guy to chief author.
Yeah,
this. So
nice. Yeah.
absolutely. So Representative Steer, whilst you like to give Representative Roach here a hard time, we work together. We like to work together. So that's another bill I authored just this week.
Yeah.
Drop that
So the point is they listen. They're not slaves. It's
No, they're paying for their overhead. They're paying for their housing, and then they get a little extra on the side to pay for treats and stuff. Or in this
No.
case, cigarettes and whatever.
Yeah, and with that said, there could definitely be some sort of reform somewhere in the
But they definitely don't need what they're claiming is the minimum wage and benefits. That's what they're claiming.
Sorry,
Nope,
not gonna happen.
nope, not interested.
Nope.
So,
But
that's that one.
we could end tax slavery. That'd be cool. We get a lot of tax refugees that flee the state,
Yeah,
right?
we
They
do.
go to Florida.
Yeah, well, I'm a tax refugee. I'd like to leave the state for tax purposes.
Well, you're not a refugee. Yeah, you still live here.
I will be as soon as I leave.
Yeah. Well, you haven't
If I
left.
leave. Yeah,
so-
I'm still here representing the people. Maybe we'll change it before we get to that stage. Maybe we can get some more Republican votes and we can make this a tax refuge state.
We need to get rid of them.
I'd like to the state of Minnesota not to be number 2 in the country for highest tax state. That'd be great.
Well,
We only got passed by New York. We were ahead in the summertime of last year. We were number 1. Not a good category to be number 1.
terrible.
So with that being said, we've got one last liberal tiers thing. You want to talk about this one, I bet.
Oh, I forgot about this.
You
one.
forgot.
I was just going to mention that it's still there.
Go
It's
ahead.
still
Ready to
there
go.
waiting to go.
So
Let's make it big. Let's make it loud.
This is yeah. Go ahead. Just play it.
Another response to RFK Jr.
Yeah.
here in our
stance.
state.
This week, I'm introducing a couple pro-vaccine bills. One of them creates a fund to help combat misinformation that's out there about vaccines, and another one tightens up the regulations related to the MMR vaccine because we've been seeing outbreaks of measles around the country. Vaccines are one of the great public health achievements of the last 100 years, and we shouldn't put barriers in place from people getting these life-saving medicines. So I'm glad to keep standing for science, and reach out to me at any point if you have any questions about the work I've been doing.
Well, this must be very strange for you.
Oh, all right. So you want to tackle that first?
So that is a bill that Representative Freiberg has brought,
And Senator Mann in the Senate.
and the thought is that he's going to bring that as an amendment in the education bill. Specifically, one of his bills, I think he's got as he stated, a few pro-vaccine bills. And one of them takes away the conscientious exemption from families to be able to not have their child vaccinated if they, feel that that's in their best interest. And so he wants to take away that right because, your body, my choice only exists if you have a fetus inside you and you want to murder it. But that's neither here nor there.
Little did we want to talk about the fact that it's another body that you're ruining.
Yeah, right. So instead, he wants to make you get your kids vaccinated if they go to daycare or to a school. And you don't have a choice to exempt them from that because, you're a disease spreader.
You're evil because you don't want to put nasty chemicals in your system.
Can't give my kid the chicken pox.
So I'm going to be specific here. I'm going to take over because this is really personal to me. Not
it's
sure.
personal to me too.
Well, I'm
but
not
I'll
sure.
let you.
I'm not sure if you know.
Take the wheel, Bill.
I'm stealing it from you, Drew. I'm stealing
Steal
it.
it.
No, this is really personal to me.
Don't
The
drive
reason,
us into a cliff.
no, the reason this is such a big issue is I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I actually got injured by a vaccine when I was a kid.
Did not know that.
Yeah, see, so that's why this is so personal to me. So the MMR vaccine, specifically the one of the bills that he's talking about. When I was a kid, I was getting ready to go to kindergarten. I was about 4 and a half, whatever it is. And my parents took me in, and these are back in the day when those vaccines were a lot different than they are today. The needles were bigger. they were more painful. At least that's the way you interpret it when you're a small person. When you're a big person, you look at those needles, you don't care anymore. But I got this needle, and I remember it being a much bigger shot than any of the other shots I got as a kid. And I got the shot, and the next morning I woke up and my leg was like twice the size of the other leg. And I was in a lot of pain. I mean, excruciating pain. And I couldn't walk. I couldn't move my leg. Like my whole leg just quit working. Just nothing, and not interested. And, as a young kid, you barely remember it. I just remember, how much pain I was in. And I thought it was for a week, right? So I was, my memory thought, okay, it was a week. Well, of course, when you're little, you don't really have a concept of time. I guess according to my parents and, the memory of what I do remember, my mom said, no, actually it was a month. You didn't walk for a whole month. We would take you to daycare. We'd set you on the couch or whatever. You'd sit on the couch at daycare. You wouldn't move. You would go out for hanging out outside, and you would sit in a lawn chair out in the backyard and just sit there and watch all the other kids play because you couldn't walk. And so I couldn't walk after getting this vaccine, and I got injured by it. So that's the reality of the situation. And so my parents used the conscientious objection, the next list. So of course, back when we were kids, the number of vaccines we gave were much less than they are today.
Yep.
And because of that injury, because of my parents seeing my reaction, and they believe it was an allergic reaction to the vaccine, my parents actually did a conscientious objection when I had to go in 7th grade to get it again. And so my parents said, no, you're not getting that again. We're not gonna put you through that. And so I didn't get it. And the only reason I didn't get it is because of the conscientious objection. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go to school. And I've got a doctorate now. I've got a high level of education, and I needed that school in order to get that education. I can't speak anymore to the fact that those teachers back then, they were great teachers. They're still great teachers. And in fact, some of them are still going. And the thing that is most frustrating to me is that I would have had to put myself at risk to have that same thing happen to me again at 7th grade as it did prior to kindergarten. And this bill that he's intending to offer as an amendment, it sounds like, would destroy the possibility of these kids having freedom. And the thing is the bill is even worse than just taking away conscientious objection. It's also removing the ability to even homeschool kids without it. The bill is very specific. It talks about 0. You cannot avoid getting these vaccines. It's a forced vaccine.
Yeah.
And, my kids, a lot of people ask, well, what's your perspective? What did you do? A lot of people are pro, a lot of people are anti. I'm not here to speak to the safety and efficacy of every vaccine, because that should be between you and your healthcare provider to discuss and decide. And you should decide that on your own. Read through all the evidence, make those decisions. My children are vaccinated. They're not vaccinated to the standard of what would be required to go to school. But we had the conscientious objection, and we signed that when Callie was going to kindergarten, because the schedule we put them on, we run the risk of what's called a cytokine storm. You introduce all of these vaccines to the system at such a young age, and you do run the risk of creating a bad immune response, and it could actually harm the child. And that's what happened to me, and that's what can happen to any. So with our pediatrician, we talked about it. We expressed what could happen, and the pediatrician set up a different schedule for us. But the problem is they can't sign a medical exemption because they run the risk of losing their medical license. And so that's why getting rid of the conscientious objection is not the right way to go. If you want people to trust the science, as you claim, Representative Freiberg, if you want people to trust that science, you need to let them do those decisions on their own. They can't be forced to trust something. You have to earn trust.
Yeah, and furthermore, then put your kid in a daycare that you feel safe in, but you can't require everybody else to have the same ideology as you, so that you can dictate what their values and their parents' values and how they see fit for their kid. I mean, I can't believe anybody's mindset would even go that way. I'm totally comfortable having my kid at a daycare if there's other kids that don't have the same vaccines. I mean, that's just me.
Well, yeah,
personally.
and people. So it's funny that you say that, because back in the day when measles vaccine didn't exist, when the MMR shot didn't exist, measles was a joke.
It was.
Your immune system should be. Now, I'm not going to say everybody's is, right? I know, because there are people that are not. There are people that are not safe without, or that are not capable of fighting off measles. But there are an increased caseloads. How many of those are actually resulting in deaths? How many of those are resulting in any sort of injury, or are they just going home with the sniffles and they don't feel good? Those aren't things that are being answered in that discussion. And back in the day when the MMR vaccine didn't exist, people had measles parties, just like when we were kids. We had chickenpox parties.
Yeah. In the 90s. It was the early 90s.
In fact, we were trying to have a chickenpox party. I was just out of town this last time. We had some kids that we know that had chickenpox, and I was trying to get my kids there because the chickenpox vaccine is as close to an mRNA vaccine as I will ever let anywhere near my system or my kids' system. And in fact, I've chosen not to allow that to happen. But the chickenpox vaccine is very similar to the COVID shot, the flu shot, those types of things. It's not the same as the MMR vaccine, right? Like when you hear the word vaccine, you think it's going to mean that you have an immunity for life, right? Like that's the whole idea. That's what they used to call them, was immunizations. That's what they used to be called.
Yeah.
Now they're called vaccines because they don't fall under the same definitions of what an immunization would be. You're not immune.
Yep.
And so those are the things that I get really frustrated with. So we have an extended vaccine discussion. And honestly, that's my answer to everybody is don't make those decisions based on what you're hearing from one person or another. Do the research yourself by talking to your providers and have a better understanding of what it is. And don't take anybody's word right at its word. Understand what you're doing before you do it.
Maybe get a second opinion.
Yeah. Second opinion wouldn't be a
Some
bad
of those
idea either.
providers might be biased.
Well,
I don't know.
well,
Call
no,
me crazy.
accurate. No, but that's what I'm getting at. Is like you should listen to your provider, but you should also then go and do the understanding yourself. Like ask the hard questions. Does this actually do anything? Does this help? Why do I need to do this now? Why can't I do it 2 years from now? Why does it all have to be together? That kind of thing.
I remember, like I said, when you talked about chickenpox party. I remember when I was a kid, it was me and my cousins, and we were all lubed up in that pink.
Yeah, the pink stuff.
The pink stuff, man.
The anti-itch.
Yeah, watching.
What was that called?
Watching.
What is that stuff called? I always remember.
I can't remember, but it stinks.
It does.
You gotta dab it on, and everybody's itchy.
So if you look at my face, you can see I have a scar on one of my eyebrows here. That's a chicken pox that I was so crazy that I scratched it right off my forehead.
Just went full meth head.
Apparently, I just took it right off my face when I was a kid. Just reached up and ripped it right off.
He was jonesing.
I got another one here somewhere in my cheeks too, and it was just ripped it right off.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Pop those chicken pox right off there.
You didn't have enough pink stuff on it.
No, not enough of that stuff. I can't. Gosh, I wish I knew what that pink stuff was called. I can see the bottle.
Yeah,
I can still smell the nasty
I
smell.
can smell it. Yeah, I know.
Didn't Benadryl help as well?
No.
That'll just put you to sleep.
That just made you sleep, so it helped because you get to sleep while you're itching.
Yeah.
But that's probably how I got these scars, because I scratched them right off. Whoops.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. Again, I think being a well-educated base is the most important to me.
And, he may not even bring that bill. That might be just a bill that he does for messaging purposes. So he can put up a video on YouTube or Facebook and say that he's, pro-vaccine, and we'll see. I guess we'll find out.
And Senator Dr. Mann is the chief author in the Senate. And, well, she's a medical doctor, so that should speak to a lot of that discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, questions on the efficacy or the
bias. Who knows?
Or the reimbursement could be a question.
That happens?
No, we're not going into that path. But I'm just throwing that out there.
It's only for COVID when they get reimbursed.
When we talk about big pharma, that's one thing that I've always found interesting. On the federal level, you got big pharma and you got people who literally take money from big pharma. But at the state level, it's a whole different coalition against big pharma. It's interesting. It's a weird political discussion for sure. So, well, I think we hit everything today. There's going to be a lot. We got 2 weeks from now. We're going to be that's the last day of session. We may not be able to record on that day. We'll probably be on the floor still until 11:59 p.m. would be my best guess.
That's 2 weeks.
2 weeks from today will be the last day of Senate session.
Well, you guys get down on the 18th?
That's what I thought was the 18th, isn't it?
I think it's Monday the
so
18th.
Nothing can pass after midnight on Sunday because the last day of session cannot.
Okay, so maybe
pass
that's Sure.
So the 19th will be the last day, but I believe, from what I understand, the 18th is the last day that we can pass anything. I could be wrong.
Sure.
You
and
can prove me wrong. Either way,
yeah.
I know that the last day of session does not correlate to the last day that bills can pass.
Gotcha.
So because you have to have a certain amount of time. for
Well,
those to
I think
happen.
it's safe to say we're going to have a special session.
I don't know. We'll
least in
see. We'll see. Well, you guys don't have one without us having one, so
We'll see, I guess.
they go together.
I mean,
The Health and Human Services bill is still a one pager, and it's got to start as a House file. So we'll see what happens.
yeah, I guess. I don't know.
You guys are working on Human Services this week. That's what I was told.
Yeah, we've got a schedule of stuff. Yep, I think that'll
Yeah.
be up on a vote for.
Actually,
I think
speaking
on
of schedule,
Tuesday.
Why don't we both? I'm going to read off my schedule. We got a bunch of bills coming up. This will be good. I'm going to bring up my floor schedule. You bring up your floor schedule. We'll both be able to talk about it. We got some stuff coming in for technical corrections. So that's the reviser's bill. We've got earned safe and sick time provisions coming up. We have the child, youth, and families technical changes. We have some criminal background check edits. That's on Monday. Tuesday, we have the swearing in of Senator Heinzman. And one bill, Senator Lucero's bill for common interest communities provisions modification. Wednesday is going to be the some driver's license changes. We will have the human services bill if the House passes it. And we will also have the both. We'll have the appropriations bill and the public policy bill. And then Thursday is going to be the E12 education appropriations, depending on if the House passes it, which it doesn't sound like you guys are even close. And then the Office of Inspector General creation, again, passing depending on committee. So that's our floor schedule ahead. I'm not sure what you've got, but I would assume it's very similar.
Yes. Monday we've got, looks like Environment Finance Bill, Senate file bill. We've got Human Services Finance Bill, Human Services Policy Bill, Education Finance Bill, Education Policy Bill, and Cannabis Policy Bill all on Monday. But I do believe the education are going to be laid over.
Yeah, so
Tabled.
we won't be seeing that. in
So
other
we
words.
won't be voting on the education, from my understanding. And then Tuesday, you have to go somewhere else on my other one. Tuesday. I haven't seen one for Tuesday yet,
Sure.
so we'll see.
You guys got a lot packed in just on Monday, so
Yeah,
it
we
sounds
do.
like you're going to be a busy group.
Yep.
So that being said, everybody remember, this is Minnesota Liberty Network. We appreciate your time and efforts. Make sure you watch, subscribe, like, whatever your viewing preference is. We also have the audio version on iHeartRadio. And if you ever have any questions, we're still waiting for those beautiful questions through email to MinnesotaLibertyNetwork@gmail.com. We appreciate you guys' support.
See ya.